It's 4:30 in the morning. Do you know where your malicious compliance is?
If you want me to talk in front of people, I'm bringing my dog and human remains. So I've spoken about my dogs on here before. I train search and rescue human remains detection dog, which basically means we wander around disaster sites, crime scenes, and wilderness area searches looking for bodies or other remains, to put it very simply. This story is a couple of years back when I was in college. I was required to take a public speaking course, and I have stage fright and social anxiety, so this was basically torture. My instructor was pretty jaded and didn't much care that I was having a panic attack on stage. She suggested I talk about something I'm more comfortable with and to toughen up. The final was supposed to be a demonstrative and informative presentation in 30 minutes long. Fine. My dogs have clearance by campus police to train on the university grounds, and I have clearance from the city and county police to bring bio-waste materials with me throughout the country. I prepare a fancy PowerPoint presentation and bring in my big, crazy cadaver dog and scent samples, including a human toe, blood, and bones. I spent a half hour showing how to train a dog and to detect human corpses, along with a few vivid anecdotes about some of my past searches. We even let some members of the audience come handle my dog and give the clicker training a try. An audience involvement in the demonstration was required. I got an A, but the mildly horrified look on my professor's face was far more rewarding.
So at the end of the day, it's not really cool to pressure people to, do something they really don't want to do. But I love how this guy actually took the teacher's advice. Believe it or not, as much as this was malicious compliance, he actually took the teacher's advice, found something he was more comfortable with talking about, and then talked about it. But imagine being that guy, being able to walk around with human remains for your cadaver dog. Not too many people have this profession.
Never mess with a rancher. I grew up on a horse ranch in Colorado, and we had a long piece of property, about 80 acres. And we raised Missouri foxtrotters. We had lived there for almost 20 years, and when some folks brought a strip of property way at the back of our land, it was a strange plot of land as it was very narrow and was sandwiched between our back fence and a busy country road. We were surprised anyone would buy it actually, as it forced the house to be pretty close to said road. Well, we never meet these new neighbors until one day my dad gets a notice from a lawyer telling us that after having surveyed the property lines, our back fence encroaches on their property between 3 and 6 inches, depending on the spot along the fence line. These folks had never met us, never introduced themselves, and our first introduction was this legal demand. My father was a salt-of-the-earth kind of man, very kind, but also very strong-willed. He called these folks, arranged a meetup, and tried to talk some sense into them. First, did 3 to 6 inches really matter that much, and why they had not come to us to talk it through? He even offered a number of different compromises. These folks were hostile from the get-go. They demanded he move the fence immediately or they would sue. Apparently, the law stated that they had put their house so far away from the fence line and they wanted to push it as far back from the road as they could when they built it. So they wanted 6 inches very badly. I still remember when my dad got home from the meeting. He hung his hat up and shook his head when he told Mom in his slow way, "Well, looks like we got the kind of folks for neighbors you don't ever want to have for neighbors." They sued and won. We were forced to move the fence in 2 weeks. I say we because I was a free slave labor, as all the farm kids are in this kind of thing. All that fencing material and the time were a big cost for my family, but we got the work done that late fall. Well, here's where the fun comes in. So the new neighbors broke ground and built it all through the end of winter and into the spring. The very next weekend after they had moved into their house, Dad roused me out of bed and we took the big truck into the town to the lumber yard. I was extremely puzzled as we loaded up a bunch of fencing material and building supplies. We didn't have any big projects going that I knew about, and I kept asking what it's for, but he just told me to wait and see with a devilish smile on his face. We built a pen in a small enclosure very near our back property line, directly behind the neighbor's new shiny house. The next day, one of our farm friends delivered a half dozen pigs to their new home. Dad insisted on feeding the hogs table scraps and all the things that would go in the composter, as well as some good balanced hog feed to keep them healthy. Now, you may not know this, but the smell of pig excrement is directly related to what they eat and their pen conditions. Table scraps make them smell bad, and I mean bad. I had to drive the four-wheeler back there every day to take care of them, and within a month, halfway to the pen, and my eyes would start watering. It smelled so bad. When we mucked out the pen with a bobcat, we also made the pile right next to the pen. I can't even imagine how bad the smell was living in that house. The neighbors, of course, freaked out again, and without ever even trying to talk to us, went the legal route. They lost the case, asking to have the pen removed as the area was zoned agricultural, and my dad had done his homework to make sure he was not breaking any laws or regulations. The pigs were far enough from us and our neighbors that it didn't bother anyone but the people he wanted it to bother. Come fall, when the winter moved in, we sold the pigs to slaughter, and Dad stacked up a bunch of building supplies next to the pen and let the neighbors know that we would be expanding the profitable operation in the spring. He smiled the whole time, speaking in a slow, steady way as he screamed at him. The new neighbors sold their house in January when the ground was frozen and the new owners would not smell the pen. Though, as soon as the old neighbors were gone, we tore down the enclosure, spread the nasty stuff in the hayfield, and the new neighbors never had a bad smell come spring. They also were great neighbors, and we're still lifelong friends. Never mess with a rancher.
All right, I'm going to say this much. By far, this is probably the best story I have ever read, period. The subtlety of the father was that of a jackhammer trying to take down a tree. It was amazing. It's that delicious Southern malicious compliance that come out of nowhere because it is so calculated. You can't prepare for it. I absolutely love this. That's all I gotta say about this. There is nothing negative about this. Shame on those people for trying to take over for 6 inches. Get over yourselves. You probably would have talked to the farmer. He'd be more than happy to work something out with you guys. But instead, you decided to go around, use a lawyer, and, be just pricks overall. Don't be a prick.
My grandfather shuts down Main Street with some malicious compliance. This is my absolute favorite story about my late grandfather. I was young at the time this happened, but I have talked to a few people in adulthood to get a few details I didn't know before. My grandfather lived on a main street in a small farming town of a few thousand. The town was laid out in a classic grid pattern off the main highway. On his property, he had 3 large ponds, 40 to 50 feet high in a line fairly close to the sidewalk, and over the years, the roots had started to lift and crack up the sidewalk. Understandably, the town wasn't pleased and wanted the trees removed so further damage wasn't incurred. Instead of coming to my grandfather to find a solution, they sent over an invoice for tree removal from property that amounted to more than his yearly property tax. Instead of paying, he chose malicious compliance. He took out his chainsaw and felled all 3 trees right across the main street without warning. On a long weekend, Friday. When the town responded with a few workers, my grandfather bluntly argued that the trees weren't on his property and therefore couldn't be charged for their removal. They looked at the invoice the town sent, and rather than argue with the most stubborn man in town, they just cut up and hauled off the trees themselves. It took all afternoon and the traffic was deterred around the block. They patched the sidewalk and the stumps are still there to this day. The town got the trees removed and my grandfather didn't pay a cent. Win-win!
This is more of that great malicious compliance, but coming from grumpy old people, which makes it even better. And I loved how he just solved the issue by taking care of it himself. Also saved one heckin' bill by just chopping down trees. Though I feel bad, he probably seen those trees grow from when they were just saplings, so it had to hurt him on the inside, honestly. But at the same rate, so much for a bill, am I right? So that is all of the stories for today, and easily my favorite story in all of malicious compliance, period. I know I say this a lot, but this is now number 1 is don't mess with a rancher. That is my favorite story, period, right now. Period, right now. To this point, it is my favorite story and easily just the best thing I've read ever. So much so I broke in the middle. So I mean, like, that says something. I want to know what your favorite story is. Please tell me in the comment section below. I look forward to reading your comments so very much. And I thank you all very much for watching. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell's neck as best as you can, and click the like button because it definitely helps a lot. And I thank you guys very much for watching, and I thank you very much for following along. You guys be great. You guys have been awesome. And as usual, as always, my friends, stay frosty and keep moving forward.